you can do a lot in life and you can try to help everyone, but just recognize that not everyone will like you or acknowledge you, and that you cannot spend your time trying to mold or modify yourself to fit other people. You have to learn when to cut people off and stop talking so you can do the things that you're meant to do.
So, Eugene, I can't help but wonder that that came through personal experience of some sort.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
This is Leadership Sound Bites. Real leaders, real moments, real growth.
So, welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Sound Bites with my super special guest who I met through the Hounds of Business community. You're just another amazing human that I've met through that community. So, it's been super fun. Dr. Eugene Manley, founder and CEO of the SCHEQ Foundation. And it's a really cool thing. It's a non-for-profit. And so welcome to the conversation. And I'm looking forward to just unpacking some of the stuff that you know and what matters to you. And you have a quote, as everyone does. And I can't wait to hear.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, the Hounds of Business have connected a lot of people that are doing great work across different areas. And
Yes.
so I'm unique and I sit in a science space, but also a patient advocacy space. And so I work to really try to make sure we get information and resources to underserved scholars to help them navigate STEM careers, that we help patients understand basic medical information and cancer information, and then give them the tools to be able to advocate for the care that they are entitled to.
Mm-hmm. Um, I freaking love that. And so what's your quote? What's
So
your
my
quote? Because I want to dive in, but I don't want to skip over the quote.
so the quote I came up with is that you can do a lot in life and you can try to help everyone, but just recognize that not everyone will like you or acknowledge you, and that you cannot spend your time trying to mold or modify yourself to fit other people. You have to learn when to cut people off and stop talking so you can do the things that you're meant to do.
So, Eugene, I can't help but wonder that that came through personal experience of some sort.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That feels very specific. It's almost like when you ask somebody something that you expect a general response and they give you very specific response. What was the learning lesson in there, sir? So it feels like,
Well, at multiple stages when, you know, I grew up, I have ADHD and it was undiagnosed for many, many years. And then you don't realize why you are perceived to, well, you are weird compared to other people, but you don't know why.
hmm,
And so I've always just been outside the box person. I was inner city, but I was a nerd. I was a erudite. I was always in my books. Um,
mhm,
and my whole life, I've never done stuff that everyone else has done just because it's like, because everyone else is clapping doesn't mean I will. Doesn't mean I don't care. It just means my brain is processing like, do I need to do this? Why is this important? And I was always the type to question things, which often got me in a lot of trouble. But I was just a why, why? And even in jobs, sometimes you would get leadership to ask, well, why is something not working? And no one on the staff is saying anything. And then I'll say, well, this is the reason. And then after the call, they were like, why'd you say that? That was unprofessional. I said, well, a question was asked and no one was speaking. Like, the thing with me, never ask me a question if you don't want an answer.
hmm. So I wonder with you, and because it was so specific, um, was it a lesson that you learned over time, or was there some epiphany or some event that happened, Eugene, that you go, you know what, I'm finally connecting these dots? Because what I heard from you is, I knew I wasn't like everyone else, but if we're super honest, none of us are like anyone else. But there's certain things, because my son had, he's an adult now, but ADHD. And so his thing was, and when we realized what was going on to get the diagnosis, it's kindergarten is when I went to go pick him up one time, and the principal and the teacher walk him out. I'm like, Okay, he's in kindergarten. And so it was an interesting thing to be the parent of a child like that because what happens is there's a chemical imbalance. And so literally every single thing is a response. So your brain does not filter priorities. And so it's like squirrel, 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 squirrel. And so he could literally, in our house, I go, "Hey, V, go upstairs and do such and such." And then I find him later and he's off doing something else because by the time he got up to the top of the stairs, something else got his attention. And, so it wasn't that he was lazy or didn't want to do it, but it just took him wherever. And so I can imagine being in a space to where there's no prioritization and it's
Yep.
just the moment you're going off and doing it.
And from what I was told by my mom, they said I was very, very shy and quiet, which is hard to believe, until I was about 4 or 5. And then they said I went to Head Start and they said I realized I was smart. And then they said nobody could get me to shut up. And even in elementary school, the teachers would say, great grades, but he just won't stop talking. But then it would be so funny because we'd be in classes and I'd be talking, but my work would get done, but no one else would finish their work. And you just try to explain it. It's like, and you just look back. But even as I went through academic, like, I don't think I got my diagnosis until I was probably in grad school.
Yeah.
So I went through a lot of years of struggling and fighting, like, why can't I do this? And why do I feel overwhelmed? And, with irregular sleep cycles. And then it just finally, you're like, okay, when you're like, it makes so much more sense. It sad it took me more than 20 plus years to, actually, yeah, grad school, like more than 23 plus years to sort of
Yeah.
figure out what was going on. And I wasn't per se weird. It's just I'm neurodivergent, and I still to this day have things that I do that are some people think are endearing, but others are like, "Why can't you look me in the eyes?" Like I am paying attention, and don't worry, because my brain is here. But like, believe me, if I'm looking you in the eye, that probably means I'm not paying attention at all because I'm so focused on you sitting there. That means the brain is elsewhere. So just let my mind wander.
It's funny you say that because I'm someone that when I go for a thought, my eyes go, I'm like pulling it out of the
Oh,
stratosphere somewhere. And it's like, and I've watched myself so much on video, from the podcast that it's like, okay, Michelle, where's it? But it's just that's where I'm grabbing whatever.
yep, your brain is processing and thinking
Yeah.
what to say and how to frame it. And people are like, can't you focus? Like, I am focused. Just
It's interesting a thing, and I think part of it is as we grow up, become adults, get emotional intelligence, develop all that ability. It's to be accepting of other people and differences and not have this baseline that they need to be like us, whatever that is. And when we get to that point where we accept other people for who they are, what's going on, to where you can look at stuff and go, okay, I haven't seen that before, but okay, and accept that, um, it's actually easier to be in your own body.
exactly, because a lot of the neurotypical, well, the normal world, you have these frameworks you sit in, and you must do this, this, and this. You must behave this way. You must act this way. You must talk this way. But none of this works for any of us that are ADHD. You're lucky to get us to sit still at all. Like the hardest thing for me was lab work, where I would have to sit there for 4 hours. That was agonizing because I don't know how I even got my PhD, but I did it.
Well, congratulations, by the way, because those are three letters I'm never getting. I don't have the aspiration to go after them. I stopped at my, master's, and I'm like, I'm good. I'm good.
And it depends on what field, but right now it's such a tricky environment because PhD can open doors, but you really have to think of where your degree is in. And if it's in a science, you have so many career paths that often you don't realize you have.
Hmm.
If you're in a literature, that's a little bit more restrictive. Sometimes it restricts you only to going to academic path, but
I was
you
going to say,
really have to think
everything.
about. And but even the scientists, they don't know. Well, I can go into government, I can go into pharma, I can go into nonprofit, I can go into science writing, I can go into consult. Like the PhD in the science is versatile. You just often aren't exposed to it.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a comment because this is what came to mind when you were talking, right? Because I'm going to give a little bit of context to this. Is that there was someone when I was going through my undergrad, because I did it as an adult. I mean, it was later in life. Um, but someone commented around, because I went to University of Phoenix, they said something along the lines of, well, I went in for HR, oh, I went in forever, and it didn't do anything for me. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And then, well, it didn't help me get a job. And I think what happens a lot of times is people go and get additional education, whatever it may be. And there's this underlying assumption that I went and got this thing in this field, and now that I have this degree, now I'm going to go work in this field. You need to be practicing in that field, right? And I think that's where people mess up is a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. You need to be taking action. It's not about, oh, I have this education. Okay, now where are the jobs? It's like apply it because you got your PhD in some sciences, but the reality of it, Eugene, is the structure and the schooling and everything that you went through to learn, like teamwork and accountability and research and all the skills, right, that have to do with the letters that you got, those are the things you're going to be applying. Yeah, you've got some basic knowledge, but a lot of time what happens is in the traditional settings, they give you case studies of things. That's not the real world, people. So, it doesn't come prepackaged that way. It's like in accounting, they'll go and go, here's all the layout and here's the entries of, and the lines and all that stuff so you can do debits and credits. What they don't tell you is that if you're doing a bookkeeping and taxes for people, they give you a grocery sack with all their stuff in it, and that's the real world. So I think part of this is you need to get real experience in parallel with having your degree, which is where internships are so freaking valuable. Get in that space or be in a job that you're doing those kind of things so that the degree says, okay, now based on our policy, we can step you into this role.
Yep. You bring an interesting point. It's a slight tangent, but I finished high school in 94, and around that time, there was this whole big push that we should not have VOTEC as much, and then they started pushing everyone have to go to college, which I completely did not understand. I see big picture of everything, but I was like, we all of a sudden everyone has to go to college, you get a degree, and that'll get you a job, and then it made everyone go into college who didn't necessarily need to be there. That doesn't mean they're good or bad students, but
Yeah,
you're going in to get this degree, and it's like, oh, well, I got this degree. I'm entitled to a job.
bingo.
You see this at undergrad. You see this for law students who are med students. Like getting a degree does not entitle you to a job. The
No.
degree means you have the basic tools to do a job, but you still have to learn how to network, make
Hmm.
connections, build trust, build leadership. These things aren't necessarily per se taught in a degree program. And you have to have those practical abilities and understand that the textbook is not real life, as you said.
Hmm.
Things go haywire out of the blue. And one thing being ADHD, which drives some people crazy, is when there is chaos, that's actually when we're the most calm.
Mm.
Everything is on fire. Everyone's like, what, and then we're just like, okay, this. The only time you'll get us to channel in. The rest of the time, it's like a rat race. Like, but it.
It's an interesting thing that you said that because the entitlement and the other thing, because I remember talking to a friend of mine when she went for her undergrad. And the thing is, we need to ask ourselves, is that going to prevent us not having it, right, from some future role that we're looking at getting? And that's the thing is that if you're wanting to advance and go into another role, and the next role that you want to go into is going to require those letters, that undergrad degree, whatever it is, don't wait to apply to realize that you need that thing. Try and have and look out to the future. And because you're not going to get it in a week.
Yep.
It's not going to happen. So I think that's the thing too, for like you said, is I didn't go the college path when I left high school. I graduated high school a year early and I was done, right? And I'm like, I'm going to go work. I'm going to live life. And if I get to the point where that's the thing holding me back, then I'll go. And I did get to that point. And the same thing with a master's. It's like, okay, if for some reason I'm in a position to where I need those letters, then I'm going to go get those letters if where I see the path going. But it's an interesting thing. So how did you land where you're at now? I'm going to pull us in a different space because
Oh,
it's not the typical path that people go because, you've landed in, especially the not-for-profit around the cancer thing and advocating for that. And I'm a huge proponent for advocating for patients. I've been in healthcare since 98 and, worked for Sutter Health for 17 and a half years and left there, had the opportunity in, what was it, 2021. But it is a challenging, complex system to navigate. And when you take people that are at their most vulnerable, sick, all that, you amp it up even more because people are not, they're in fight or flight mode. They're stressed, they're exhausted, they're all this stuff, and they don't think clearly. So even stuff that's complex becomes like out of reach for people.
interesting. I have a very weird and unique in way. It's just like my ADHD. It was never linear. As a kid, I grew up chronic asthmatic. I was in the hospital pretty much up to 30 times a year until I was about 10.
Wow.
I ended up having to be a caregiver for my grandparents from 10 to like 17. So I had to grow up way faster than I wanted or needed to. So
Yeah.
when you start getting the weight of the world put on you, you you get to miss things that you would like to have done. But also, I was still in my books. I was doing science fairs, but because I spent all that time in the hospital, I guess I always wanted to sort of, understand medicine to some degree and
Hmm.
how the body is injured, how it works, how you repair it. But also, when I was growing up, that was the '80s, so Transformers it came out, and I did a lot of Transformers model cars, and so I had this brain that was running back and forth between engineering and biology before I even knew it. And my department head in high school finally caught me and said, I think you'd be great to do a bioengineering degree because that will be sort of a mixture of your engineering and science background. And so I went to undergrad to do that, but my school said they had the program, but it was really interdisciplinary and they didn't have that degree really at the time. And then I was there, I was like, oh. And so then I just had to opt into the next closest curriculum, which was mechanical engineering. And anyone who knows a mechanical engineer from Michigan, all those programs focus on automotive. And I was just like, oh, oh. And but I managed to get through, but I took my fourth year and went abroad to England. And then I did my fifth year of undergrad and went to Miami to the National Student Exchange Program. And then and at that point I knew I was going to be the outlier and just do my own path. And then I went back to graduate, but so I did the undergrad in mechanical, but spent all my summers in biomedical research, and then did my master's in biomedical engineering, but it was knee ligament, so not real, so it wasn't really wet bio, it was biomechanics. And I said, okay, I need to get some wet biology work. So that's what I ended up doing my PhD in molecular and cell biology and biochemistry. My PhD was in lung cancer, but also in that lab worked on sexual dimorphism, which to keep it simple, I'm trying to keep it simple.
Well, Eugene, never even heard that term, but go ahead.
The easiest way to describe sexual dimorphism is some organs and cells behave differently in male versus female.
Right.
If we think about it, the easiest example is liver and drug metabolism. This is the easiest
Okay.
example. Even though the liver is the same, because the growth hormone signaling patterns are different in females versus male, you have different cytochrome P450 that are active in females versus males. And so this can sometimes directly impact how drugs are metabolized by both
Hmm.
sexes. So this is like in the 70s stuff, we didn't have, rules that you had to have females in studies because all the researchers were men. So this is why we had things like
Oh.
DDT coming out that you don't do your trials on women, and then you see all these birth defects. And so then they
Oh, I
started
got
putting in human protections and that you have to include females in the studies because they weren't thinking about it. So metabolism is different, sometimes the same, but now when you
What's
develop
interesting is we wouldn't think it was different, and women have children, give birth, and okay.
like the bone structure sometimes is
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
but the liver, the profile, the enzymes, some are the same but some are different, so you have to think about these things. So
Yeah.
And then I did my postdocs, went back in orthopedics, went back in arsenic carcinogenesis, and then went back in breast cancer and multiplex imaging. So it looked like I was all over the place, but the idea was I had wanted to be a professor that studied cancers that metastasized the bone. That is what I wanted to do.
Interesting. Okay.
But then I went to multiple institutions and I just was trying to do work, but I wasn't getting help getting grants written and funded. And and I'm a first gen scholar dirt poor, so I did all these moves with no income. And then finally I said I have to get off this train because I need to have some kind of income and salary because I'm getting too old to still be destitute. And my whole
Right.
reason was to get a degree was to not completely be destitute. And I'm
Right.
still failing at that part. But hey, we're working on
Well, but honestly, if
it.
you look at, because destitute is a pretty powerful word. I mean, that powerful word, and I don't get any of that sense from you. But are you where you thought you would be at this point in your life? Maybe not.
Well,
Uh,
it's weird. I not because I'm so driven to do and just make a difference. I never think about what I have done. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I'm
no.
always so busy looking forward that I feel if I ever take a step back to reflect, that I might get complacent and then lose my drive. I know that sounds so counterintuitive,
No,
but
it is no, Eugene, it's a freaking story, is what it is. Okay. We
but
well, we all have them. So here's the thing, because what you're talking about is what most of us humans and leaders and people with goals do is we're so busy facing forward and looking at the next thing. We don't take the time to pause and just look back and see how far we've come. And it seems basic. It's like, Michelle, what's the big deal? It's powerful because, like you just said, all the stuff that you just talked about, okay, and all I mean, I don't even know the stuff that you were talking about. The words sound familiar in some things, but where you are today and what you've done and what you've accomplished, the knowledge that you have, the understanding that you have about things is mind-boggling. I mean, I have basic knowledge about stuff, leadership development, executive coaching, all the stuff. My undergrad was in IT. And so I went into that space. So programming, all that. So my brain works in that kind of fashion. Take the complex, make it simple. But where you came from and all the stuff that you talked about, hello.
yep, it gave me a unique skill set. I mean, I didn't get the different jobs and roles to be different. It was something new. I could learn something, I could apply it, move it forward. And then after my training, I ended up in the nonprofit space. That was never on my radar. If you had asked me 5 years ago, would I be launching my own nonprofit, I would have looked at you like you were crazy.
So
It just
what prompted that? What was the trigger for that? I mean, because
for
to your point, because I'm thinking about all the stuff that you went through with sciences. It's like you could actually go in and apply that knowledge into breakthroughs and science. You wanted to go into education.
well, it was hard because as people say, the job market stuff. I put out more than 300 applications and I
Wow.
only had a couple calls, and sometimes you get a call, but then they don't follow up. I still remember the best case was someone wanted me to interview for a position. It was a recruiter, but the person doing the recruiting didn't even know the job, so I ended up doing my own interview, and I still didn't get the job. I said, "Screw this." So I said, "I'm just gonna go in nonprofit." So I learned, fundraising and development at the American Association for Cancer Research. And
Okay.
then that led to my position at Lung Cancer Research Foundation, where I oversaw the grant administration system. Now, because my PhD was in lung cancer, there were some people that started reaching out to ask me to speak about lung cancer disparities. It wasn't even on my radar, but because I have a background in lung, my father
Yeah.
was a chronic smoker, but he never had lung cancer. I said, okay, I can do this. And then that turned into my position at Longevity, where I
Right.
was director of STEM workforce initiatives. So along the way, I grew up poor. I've just seen what it was like when healthcare wasn't delivered to my family. I've seen the challenges that minority scholars face navigating academia. And then as I
Mhm.
was in a nonprofit space, I see the gaps between what underserved patients get versus what they need. And so the
Mhm.
totality said, okay, what can I do to start making inroads for them? So that's what led to me launching a nonprofit. It wasn't that I'm going to run, it just so happened, okay, this is a gap that I can address.
Yeah, that you had passion around. So how's it going? I mean, what are some wins? How are you feeling about it? Is it working? I mean, all the stuff that you wonder, it's like, okay, is this still the path? What's next for me? Do I need all the questions that I have in my head about how do I know it's working? Because I go through that same stuff with me because I'm self-employed, and it's like, do you throw the towel in? Do you keep going?
Oh,
I mean, it's like,
yes.
so what
I am.
are you at? And I think people, leaders, whether you're self-employed and questioning all that stuff too, or you're, a W-2 and working for somebody else going, okay, it's time to go do my own thing. What are you looking at to that keeps you going to go, okay, yeah, there's enough that I'm going to keep going because this is the right path.
You know, interesting you asked that. I felt there was a need. I was passionate about the issues. I knew how to address them. I can do program development, design, evaluation, consulting. And
Hmm.
so I said, where are we making an impact? And now I've been a solopreneur, even though it's not solopreneur almost 2 years. I guess in a week it'll be 2 years. I guess I'll make a write up about it.
Congratulations early.
Thank you. But the challenge, is same as it's like funding, fundraising, getting clients, trying to get people to, getting pharma to do partnerships, trying to get other partnerships, and then trying to run website, going to conferences,
Hmm.
speaking, meeting, blogging, and you're like pulled in 20 different directions because everything has to be done, but there's only one of you, and then you just sort of have to get to the point like, nope, I've done enough today, and just you prioritize, okay, what has to be done, and you just have to be comfortable letting some things go and wait. You have to
Right.
learn that lesson or learn to get a team. I'm working on getting volunteers and learn to delegate, which I have no problem delegating. I mean, I do, but I, I,
You're
I,
like, I just lied.
I'd like to say I believe I can delegate.
Oh, that's funny.
But the perfection is like I got to make sure it's all right. But also, like, you have to learn to be able to let people train and get to that point, and that's the hardest thing for leaders to do. That is the hard thing.
Well, it's probably the hardest thing for you to do. I think some leaders, it's easier than others, and it depends on where you sit and what you're telling yourself. If you're in the controlled space, where you're controller and all that stuff, we've got narratives that we're telling ourselves. It's got to be done the right way, the right way. And when we actually peel that back, the right way is my way. And it's like, so there are other ways. And like I say, there's more than one way to skin an apple, okay? To
Yep.
peel an apple. There's more than one way. But we seem to think that our way is the right way. So
Right.
is it working, Eugene? What are you looking at to know? What are you most proud of in this space? Because that's a huge accomplishment, 2 years. It's over 4 years for me. I'm in my fifth year. So what are you most proud of?
The wins are one that we have a nice website, SCHEQ.org, SCHEQ.org. We finally started to split the site into information for patients, caregivers, and survivors.
Okay.
We finally started getting some patient infographics. The big thing I wanted to do was increase health literacy. So
Yeah.
now we're starting to put general medical infographics and some general cancer infographics. And for
Right.
those cancer infographics, we're doing one on the cancer and then one on the disparity in that cancer. It doesn't matter which group. So we're slowly starting to get these out to build a whole repository of infographics, and then probably after we get to around 30, 35, then we have enough to start creating curriculum around them, so then we can go to different community groups, universities, etc., and then talk about things like this is clinical trials, this is basic research, but we're slowly building to that point. The other major win that I just received is that we just received Best STEM Diversity in Cancer Health Equity Nonprofit award from Acquisition International as part of their Global International Awards program. That was just received about a month ago.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations.
Thank you. And we also were profiled in the Village Voice. And so,
Okay. So what
so
have you noticed since you've gotten that, I'm going to say recognition, right? Or some people shining a light on what you're doing?
it's on the one hand, it's great because it's showing that at some level I am making an impact and people are recognizing what we're doing. But these things have just come about recently, so it's still trying to cultivate relationships to move things forward. Now on the back end, like I thought I was going to hit the ground running this year and really get all my charitable giving out, but
Yeah.
life lifed me really hard, and
Yeah.
so
Life can be
you know, I had a ankle fracture, and then I had a parent died, and I had to plan a funeral on one leg, and then I had reconstructive surgery on my foot. So basically I lost the first 5 months of the year. So, and I almost folded because like I had no money, no income, and
yeah.
I couldn't do work because, well, when you're in pain and on
Yeah.
opioids and can barely walk and function, you cannot do the thing you need to do. So
Yeah.
that was quite challenging. It was actually very, very challenging. I mean, I almost folded multiple times, but I had to finally just get another job, which I just took officially yesterday. So I needed to get part-time job for some income, but it's still in an
Yeah.
area tangential to what I like to do, and that's
Yeah.
still helping patients navigate care and helping Medicare patients get wound healing products that will help them recover faster. So
Yeah. This thing I want to highlight, and by the way, I'm sorry, and congratulations, in the same breath. I think one of the things to highlight that you called out is it's not a straight path. And it doesn't mean just because you're going to supplement for whatever. I have a lot of swim lanes with what I do, but just because you're supplementing something like income or whatever doesn't mean that this other thing's a failure, right? And
correct.
it's just like with a team. I remember one of my first teams, like in corporate world, we were in accounting, and we met once a week to go over project lists and all that stuff. And so you'd have people on the team that were in a part in what they were doing because we were always doing improvement work and new projects, so it was an uncharted path. That someone go, I'm really not sure what to do with this thing, and some other team member goes, I know what to do, and so they would double team. And that's essentially what we need to do as humans, right? When we're navigating stuff, that we've got this clear path and everything's great, or we know what to do, or we have the skills. But when we get to a point where we're not sure, uncomfortable, or we need extra help, it's not failure to reach out or to get it, right? So for you, it's like, okay, here's the reality. I need to supplement right now, but I'm still staying the course.
Exactly.
And that's okay. And I think it's important to let people know that, because a lot of times it's like, well, I really didn't succeed or what. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about?
Yep.
You're down a path that people aren't going. Go. Whatever
Yep.
you need to do to keep this thing together and afloat, do it.
Yep. I tell people the only failure in life is when you have never done something or never tried to do something you wanted. You can't say no if a path is right on if you've never done it. You can say, well, I want to go study abroad, but if you are too afraid to get on a plane or you never do it, then you don't know what that would do or open up for you as far as your life and your experience. So a fear of change is not a reason to not do change, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. But
Yeah.
so many people are so crippled by the thought of failure and like, and I'm neurodivergent. I live in let's go, and if it doesn't work, keep moving because you even if something doesn't work, you've learned something and you can still
Yeah.
apply it to what you
Yeah.
do going forward. And so many people forget that part.
Well, or don't even know it in the first place. Um, I appreciate this time. I mean, you have such a freaking interesting background and story and path and journey. So I will put contact information in the description. Can you just share really quick how people can help or support the work that you're doing because you are a not-for-profit?
Yep. So we can go, website, SCHEQ.org. We have a contact page. You can put your information in if you want to volunteer. We have a donation page if you want to donate. If there's something you want to do as in-kind donation, you can work with me on that. So all the contact info is on the website. We have our social media, our LinkedIn page, which is I know, ironically, all the social media for the nonprofit is STEMMCHEQ. So that's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. Blue Sky, we got SCHEQ. I don't know how we got SCHEQ for Blue Sky, but that's sort of where we are. But then we are starting some we are starting some webinar series. We are launching some podcasts. So we're now sort of at the stage where I can start getting the video and audio content out, which will help us get more people to be aware of what we're doing.
Okay, and I'm assuming, but I'm going to ask that people don't need to be living where you live in order to volunteer and help.
Nope, because
Okay.
I work remotely. Because the
Okay.
work I do, my work is tricky. You know, I could apply for some local New York grants, but because I don't do stuff locally on the ground, I'm not really eligible for many of these things because the
Okay.
stuff I create are information and resources online that
Right.
anyone can access and use and share. And that's the goal, is to build that up. And then I usually go out to speak. And I have friends that are teachers, so I speak to their kids about STEM careers. I
Yeah.
speak to community groups about cancer disparities, advocating for care you deserve. And then I work with scholars about navigating careers and career transitions.
Okay,
So
cool.
plenty of work to do, and it can all be done remotely.
Okay, cool. I just had to ask.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time, sir. If there's one or two things you want people to walk away with from our conversation beyond what you've just shared, does anything come to mind?
I think one, just like I said, don't be afraid to fail. It's not a sign of failure if you never, you have to try to know if it works or doesn't work. And two, don't wait for a job or an employer to tell you what you need to get training in. If they aren't going to give you training, realize now we have things like Udemy, Coursera, where you can get your own certificate. You don't wait for someone to help you get the other skills you might need. You can take some of your own initiative.
Yeah. The thing I would add, because of the space that we're in now with AI, is don't leave it behind.
Yeah.
Get involved in AI, understand what it is, understand how it changes what you do, and incorporate into what you do. It's not going away. And so it's super important for people to be open and understand how can this help me? How can this help what I do? So yeah, I would just add that.
And when you use AI, make sure you don't let it do everything for you. Use
Mhm.
it as a tool,
Yeah.
but it cannot be driving your whole business strategy, your business plan, your writing. Because once you forget how to critically read and write, your writing regresses. And so you still
Mhm.
have to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a partner and a buddy to help with that stuff and then navigate because make sure it's your voice, make sure it's your stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you for the time. I greatly appreciate it. And until next time, this is Leadership Soundbites. Please like, share, subscribe. If you want to reach out to Eugene, I'm going to put the description or contact info in the description. Have an awesome day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.